Hi guys. So, I may have overslept on a school day and skipped school. But it's fine because it was a half day anyways, so you know what I mean? So I had nothing to do the whole day. So why not make a video? So I just sat down and started drawing on my iPad. This is our reference. I chose this one cause I needed to work on my hand anatomy. So this is the sketching process. While I was working on the hair, I was having trouble drawing it, like the reference. So I kind of just made it look like a layered hairstyle. If you see a mistake, use Liquify. I personally use this instead of the transform tool when trying to fix anatomy mistakes because you won't have to redraw any other lines. Also, it's just so much cleaner. I usually only use the transform tool to move something at a different place, or when I'm copying and pasting something and I want to warp it. I changed the eye shape to how I usually draw eyes, so it looks more like my art style. I also made her smiling cuss for this piece. I was going for Zyko vibes. Don't mind the finger here, I was trying to fix it. It'll look better later. Now for cleaning up the sketch. You could also lower the opacity of the sketch and then do line art. But I personally like doing this because line art takes too long for me. Also, this helps with keeping your piece to what you originally imagined. Like say you're doing your line art, and then when you're done with it, the sketch looks better than the lines. I've always had trouble with this, so that's why I just erase marks I don't want. I think it makes my art look better in terms of lines, but this really depends on your art style. Like for example, this drawing, it requires very precise line art, but in my style, it doesn't really matter if the lines are messy or not. By the way, this is my brush for the sketching. To get it, take a screenshot, then import it in IBIS Paint. Now for the rendering. I press the selection layer and then color the whole silhouette. I do this before coloring because it's easier, so I won't exceed the lines. I also use lasso fill to fill things easier. Now for base colors. I just added a layer underneath the line art and started adding the colors of my drawing. It was kinda hard just to do it with my rendering pencil, so I just used the lasso fill again. Pav, you draw on the wrong layer, and you have to undo all of it. Now I start shading. I just add a layer and set it to multiply. Then I just use a grayish purple and start with the basic shading. I was kind of confused on this part though, because on the reference, I didn't know where the light source was. Also, these are the brushes I used for all of my rendering. I also used an airbrush on some parts. After the purple, I go in with a grayish pink on the same layer. I put this on higher keys if that makes sense, such as the nose, fingers, generally where the pink areas would be. After that, I erased where the light would be using the reference. Then, I added a layer on top of the skin layer and set it to clipping. This is how I find my skin palette. I start with my base color. I find my palette by moving the colors kind of like a candy cane shape, as you can see what I'm doing right now. I do the candy cane shape and slightly move the color to a different hue to a more cooler color. I keep doing this process. This is one way to find cool colors in your piece. Another way to find your palette is instead of moving the circle in a candy cane movement, you can just go in a diagonal line. Like this. I only do this depending on the environment the subject is in. I just do that whole process and add the warm and cool colors to my drawing. I add it to key points again, like the eye bags and blush, so on and so forth. Then I erase the highlights. I sometimes like using a reddish orange on the key points again. For the whites, like the eyes and the teeth, I use a really light purple. Then I color the eyes. Then the yummy lips. The lips and eyes tutorial will be in the description, by the way. For the hair, I just added a multiply layer on top of the hair layer, then color picked the hair color. I just colored a bunch of blobs to the shadows of the hair. Then I used this brush eraser to erase the ends of the blob. As you can see what I'm doing right now. Then I just added some more blobs and repeated the process. I also erased those strands to make it look more like hair. I slightly lowered the opacity because it was too dark for me. Then add a layer and set it to overlay. I used a more saturated color so it's not too gray. Then put those layers on clipping. Then I added a screen layer. I basically did the same thing as the shadows, but higher. I used the same color as the one I used for overlay. Then I just added a bunch of strands. Then I set it to clipping and merged the hair layers. Then I merged all the skin layers. Then merged all the layers together, except the basic shadows. Then I set the multiply to clipping on the subject. Here, I just added some extra details. Then I added some extra hair strands to make it more realistic. For the background, I made it light gray. I like adding these gray anime pictures to the background because it kinda gives a manga feel. After I add it, I lower the opacity to my liking. Then, I add a soft light layer and just airbrush an orange pinkish color all over the face. I added it to the background too, so it matches the person. Then I added an add layer and just used the same pink color and white to add highlights. Then I just liquefied some parts and added small details. Then I just added blood, because, why not? Just make it more edgy lol. I added a pixelation filter because I can't draw blood for the life of me. Blood finished. Here, I just added some red to make it pop. After looking at the finished product, I thought it was a little boring, not gonna lie. So I just added a noise filter on a duplicate layer. And finish. You can see how much the filters changed the drawing law. I'm not gonna lie, this took too long to edit, so please blow up.